Hello students, welcome to section 17. In this section, we'll be learning how to solve word problems related to linear equations. Now, before we actually start solving linear equations, there are some terms and some words we need to understand and how to use them. So first off, we'll start with terms that help us add. So here I have terms that add. So if I have more, more, higher, greater, and etc. All these terms help me to add. Now, before we understand how they help us to add, I will take an example and see. So let's say that I have my father's age. So I'll say my father's age is 25 years more than me. So here the important word is again, as we know, more. As we can see, here the important word is more. So how do I write the equation? So the reason why more is important here because I do not know my father's age. So if I do not know my father's age, then I'll have to write my father's age as y and my age as x. So that means I'll have two unknown variables. But the statement here clearly says that my father's age is 25 years more than me. That means the statement is saying that y, that is my father's age, is 25 years more. More means we have to add. So I have to write 25, more means plus 25 plus than me. But my age is x. So I can write y is equals to 25 plus x. So instead of writing y, now I just have to write 25 plus x as my father's age. So this becomes 25 plus x. So this is why more, higher, greater, these kinds of terms are very essential to understand for you so that you can solve word problems more efficiently. As always, we want to avoid too many unknown variables in our questions. Therefore, we can write y is equals to 25 plus x. Now let's take another example. So here let's say I have this was my equation, statement number one. The equation here is y is equals to x plus 25, where x is equals to my age and y is father's age. Now it's very important to specify what is x, what is y. If you do not specify what is x and what is y, the examiner or whoever reads your solution does not know what you're talking about. So it's very important to specify what is x and what is y that you have defined. Now let's take a second example. Let's say a girl has some marks more than me. So I'll write she has 20 more marks than me. Again, the important word here is more. That means I need to add. Now, again, I do not know how much marks she has, but I do know that she has 20 more than me. So if I say that her marks is y and my marks is x, so I can define y as 20 more. That means 20 more means adding. So I have to add 20 with 20 more marks than me, but my marks are x. So y becomes 20 plus x. So this is how we solve linear equation word problems that have addition terms in the question. Now we'll move on to subtracting word problems. So if I have some, let's say, subtracting terms, so some of the terms are less, smaller, shorter, etc. You can find up more words that help us to subtract. Now again, we are going to take some examples in order for us to understand how to solve linear equation word problems that involve subtracting. So let's say I have a brother who has shorter height than me. So I can say the statement might say my brother is 15 centimeter shorter than me. Now again, I am comparing my brother's height to my height. Now the important word here is shorter. Shorter means that I need to subtract. But the question is, from whom do I need to subtract? So let's try to understand this. So the statement says that my brother is 15 centimeters shorter than me. That means this guy, that means height of this guy is greater than height of this guy over here. So this height is greater than this height. Therefore, if I say my brother is 15 centimeters shorter than me, that means I am defining my height as x and my brother's height as y. So clearly, as we can see, x is greater than y. Now back to our solution. So once I have defined this, let's say his height is y, my height is x. Now back to our question. My brother is 15 centimeter shorter than me. We have two unknown variables. I want to try to reduce this to one unknown variable. So my brother is 15 centimeters shorter. So y is equals to 15 centimeters shorter. So 15. Now shorter means minus. Now if I place the minus sign here and then I write x, that means my height has to be less than 15, because let's see if my height is less than 15 centimeter. If I have less than 15 centimeter, then the height will be positive. That means this will be plus 1. But there is no human being who has a height of 1 centimeter. So that means x has to be greater than at least 15, because 15 centimeters 15 centimeters is equals to at least 1.2 feet. But as we know, all humans have an average height of at least 5 feet. So therefore, whenever I solve problems related to shorter, what I need to do is I need to write the value that is greater. So I know that x is greater, and then I need to subtract 15 from that. So this is how I define subtracting word terms. So I have y is equals to x minus 15, and instead of y is equals to 15 minus x. If you still did not understand, let's actually try to solve a value with this. Let's say I have, let's say, for example, I'll take my height. So my height is 186 centimeters. And let's say I have a brother whose height is 15 centimeters less than me. So I'll define my height as x, my brother's height as y, which is equals to x minus 15 or 15 minus x. Let's see which height is correct. So now we need to find y. So y is equals to x minus 15. The value of x is 186 and 15 is minus 15. So this is equals to 171 centimeters. Obviously this value is positive. Let's take the second definition or second value that we found. Let's try to solve this. So here we have y is equals to 15 minus x, but x is 186. So this becomes minus 171, minus 171. Now, what is important to understand here, that here we have a term minus. You will never hear anybody say that my height is minus 50 centimeter, or for example, if you are talking in feet, then nobody ever says that my height is minus 6 feet. Therefore, or let's take a better example. If you know the world's tallest building is about 1,000 meters tall, but you'll never hear anybody say that the world's tallest building is minus 1,000 meter tall. That simply does not exist. So the one thing that we need to understand is that heights in this example, or let's say even age, can never be negative. So if they can never be negative, that means this value that we used is completely wrong. So therefore, I cannot do 15 minus x. I always have to write x minus 15. I hope you understood this concept. If you still face any problems in understanding subtracting word terms, I'll help you out once again. Now we'll do one example again and then we'll move on. Let's say that there are two classes. One, you have class 8, and you have class 10th. Now here the statement might say that class 8 has two less benches than class 10th. So I'll write this statement once again in order to be clear. So my statement says that class 8 has two less benches, or rather two benches less, two benches less than class 10th. So again, the important term here is less. That means I need to subtract. Now again, I'm going to define what is my x, what is my y. Now all of you need to pay very close attention to what I'm about to say. Let's say class 8th has x benches and class 10th has y benches. Now clearly from the statement I can decide that x is less than y because the statement says so. That means if I'm going to write a subtracting equation, that means I have to write x is equals to, now we need to pay attention here. That means x class 8th, which is class 8, has two benches less. That means it has minus two benches from the amount of benches that class 10th has. So I have this minus 2. So my statement here becomes x is equals to y minus 2. And this is how we formulate equations for the word problems. Now, in our next term understanding, we are going to learn which one, when to choose, or which, rather I would say, which value to choose as x, and should we add or should we subtract. So now let's say I have an example here that there are two friends. One is Akash and the other one is John. The age of Akash is 16 and 16 years, and the age of John is 20 years. Now we need to understand how statements work. So let's say case 1, I need to define which age I need to say as x. So in case 1, I'm going to say that let Akash's age be x. So we're going to make a table here and we're going to compare how these values come out. So I have Akash here and I have John here. Now in this case I'm saying, which is case 1, that Akash's age is X. So if Akash's age is X, we can clearly see John is 4 years older than him. So John's age becomes X plus 4. So I can say that John's age here becomes X plus 4. Now let's take case 2 and see what happens. I have John's age as X. So here I have John's age X. This is my case number 2. And now we can clearly see that Akash is younger than John. That means his age becomes X minus 4. So here I have case 2, which is X minus 4. So in case 1, if Akash has X age, then John's age becomes X plus 4. And if in case 2, John's age is X, Akash's age becomes X minus 4. We're going to see how this and why does this differ. So we're going to make the table once again. I have Akash here. I have John here. This is case 1. Case 2. This is X. This is X plus 4. This is X minus 4. X. This is X minus 4. X minus 4, and this is X. So now once I have this, we'll try to understand why the two equations are different. Now in case 1, Akash is younger than John, therefore I have X plus 4. That means the first person or the primary person is smaller or smaller in age, or you can say younger in age, maybe if you want to say it that way, younger in age. And in second case, case number 2, I have X minus 4 as Akash age. That means the first person, which is John in the second case, is greater in age, or you can say older in age, whatever may be the case may be. Now what is important here, that if the first person is smaller, then I get addition in my second person's age, and if, let's mark this out, if my first person is smaller, then I get my second person statement as X plus 4, and if my first person is greater in age or older in age, you can say, then I get my statement as negative in value for the second person. So what we need to understand here is that if I assume if I assume smaller values as X, then the second value I get will be in terms of addition, will be in terms of addition. And if I assume greater value as x, then my second value will be in terms of subtraction. Will be in terms of subtraction. Now, all of you might wonder that why are we trying to learn this? The reason we are trying to learn this is because of this particular page. As we saw when we were trying to solve, pardon me, this particular page. Remember back when we were trying to learn how subtracting terms work, we started to write 15 minus x. But as we saw in our next solution that 15 minus x was completely wrong. So therefore, whenever we try to subtract, subtraction becomes a little bit complicated than addition. That is why addition is much easier than subtraction. Therefore, whenever you assume values while solving word problems, always try to assume the smaller values as x. So whenever you assume the smaller value as x, anything that you get, let's take a random example more, that March has 2 more days, 2 more days, 2 more days than February. So if I write let February be x, February be x, this means March days becomes x plus 2. And if I allow March, if I allow the number of days in March be x, we have to be very specific whenever we define our values. So number of days has to be written here. Number of days, let March be x, that means February becomes x minus 2. Always remember, whenever we are going to solve word problems in the future, anytime addition is much easier than subtraction. Therefore, always try to assume the smaller values as x. That will be all for this section. I hope this section was helpful. If you do face any doubts in this particular part or forming equations for word problems, we can do this section once again. In the next section, we'll start out with word problems and we'll try to solve questions from our textbooks because they are quite detailed and we do not have new questions as for now. Thank you, and this section will end now.